Good morning and welcome to Kid News. I'm Kim. Today is Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. And we begin with the crew of the International Space Station once again in duck and cover mode. After having to move the entire station up a mile to avoid an incoming piece of space junk just last week, the U.S. Space Command is now tracking a fresh cluster of floating debris, with more than 1,500 pieces of trash in the vicinity of the orbiting lab. As for who and what's to blame, the U.S. government is pointing a firm finger at Russia for causing the current mess when it destroyed one of its own satellites in a weapons test yesterday. Not mincing words, the State Department called Russia's action dangerous, reckless, and irresponsible. NASA ordered astronauts into their Dragon capsule in case an emergency departure was necessary. It wasn't, and they've since been allowed out, but remain on alert as the station continues to pass through the debris field. The crew seems to be taking the situation in stride, though, with Mark Vandehei calling it a bonding experience. In other space news, NASA has tapped a familiar fuzzy face for a special test flight to the moon. In early 2022, the agency will launch an unmanned rocket for a run around the lunar rock. On board, a stuffed Snoopy accompanied by 2 Lego figurines. Everybody's favorite Beagle will wear his own spacesuit, custom designed to look like those worn by real astronauts. His mission? To float, which will let NASA know that the spaceship has entered zero gravity. Snoopy is no stranger to space. According to Gadgets 360, during the Apollo 10 mission in 1969, the lunar module was nicknamed Snoopy because its job was to snoop around the surface to find a good landing spot for the next Apollo mission. Around the same time, Snoopy's creator, Charles Schulz, created comic strips with Snoopy on the moon in a bid to drum up support for NASA and space travel. It's back to virtual school for millions of kids this week, but not because of COVID. The capital of India is experiencing some of the worst air pollution on record, leading the government to shut down schools so students can stay indoors. Horrible air quality isn't new to New Delhi. It ranks as one of the most polluted cities in the world. The problem is especially bad in wintertime, with some people blaming farmers who burn their crops after harvest. Thick smog and weak winds this week are combining to make a bad situation worse, with the air quality index hovering in the 400s on a scale that tops out at 500. And it's not just the kids who will be home this week. India's Supreme Court has just ordered a citywide lockdown, closing offices and banning all non-essential travel. Korean culture continues to flex its muscles in the world of American entertainment. Sesame Street has announced it will soon welcome its first Asian American Muppet to its cast of characters. Ji-young is 7 years old and, like many kids her age, likes to skateboard and play the electric guitar. Her name in Korean translates roughly to smart and brave in English. Producers say one of Ji-young's roles on the program will be to teach kids the importance of being an upstander, someone who stands up for others who are being bullied, rather than a bystander who just watches it happen. Normally, it takes the show's creative team years to design a new character, but Ji-young's creation took only a matter of months. It's part of an initiative called Coming Together to address race and culture issues. Ji-young will make her debut in a Thanksgiving Day special called See Us Coming Together, airing on HBO Max as well as local PBS stations. A Northern California neighborhood all but shut down this weekend when an enormous black bear wandered into town. Police closed streets and sent out alerts as the 500-pound furry interloper crashed through backyard fences and ambled down sidewalks before climbing nearly 100 feet up a redwood tree and promptly falling asleep. As crowds gathered and busted out binoculars to get a closer look, local officials debated the best course of action. Wildlife experts ultimately settled on the tried and true, placing some fish and other food at the bottom of the tree and waiting for the bear to get hungry. Sure enough, come nightfall, when most of the looky-loos had left, the big black bear climbed down and headed safely back to a nearby forest. That's it for Kid News this morning. Now our Kid News quiz. according to the U.S., what reportedly caused the newest field of space junk threatening the International Space Station. An old Russian satellite. What's forcing school kids in New Delhi, India, back into virtual learning this week? Air pollution. What's the name of the newest character on Sesame Street? Ji Young, the show's first Asian American Muppet. What was the name of the lunar module for the Apollo 10 mission? Snoopy. And in our KidNuz kicker, where is the heart of America? According to the Census Bureau, the center of the U.S. for the past decade, population-wise at least, has been the small town of Plato, Missouri. Every 10 years, after the government counts up its citizens, it determines the place in the country around which an equal number of people are living. Today, officials will announce America's newest heart, taken from the most recent census, and it's not expected to move far. Alex Zakruski, an urban planner who 10 years ago successfully predicted Plato, thinks the center will only shift about 13 miles southwest to somewhere in Wright County, also in Missouri, a state which has held the title since 1980. The country's very first center, back in 1790, was Chestertown, Maryland. It's been shifting southward and westward ever since. Before we go, a big KidNuz shout out for our terrific teachers and their students. Ms. Brousseau at Gold Academy in Indianapolis, Indiana. Mrs. Hitch at John M. Clayton Elementary in Selbyville, Delaware. Mrs. Cox at Williams Township School in Whiteville, North Carolina. Mrs. Madrid at Cesar E. Chavez School in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And Ms. Sharma at Brains Rainbow in Meerut, Uttar Pradesh, India. Thanks for listening, everyone. Please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts, and we hope you tune in for more KidNuz tomorrow morning.